right. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants event. My name is Joe Grabowski, and I'll be your host for today. We are getting well and truly into February now, and February is always one of our favorite months where we spend the month focusing on and featuring incredible women in science, exploration, adventure, and conservation from all around the world. So if you haven't visited the website, do take a little bit of time to do so. We have some great speakers coming up this month, and then we have a couple events coming up as well. Next week, we have one with the If Then ambassadors with Lyda Hill Philanthropy. So we're featuring an amazing collection of women in a variety of exciting careers, really cool STEM pathways that your students can check out. And the following week, we have a series with Environment Climate Change Canada, and we're going to learn about some amazing women and some of the jobs that they're doing in that sector, doing things like biology, environmental studies, and things like that. Okay, let's get into today's event. Today, we're going to spend a little time with Andi Cross. She is on an epic expedition circling the globe using storytelling to bring conservation to life. So along with her incredible team from the Edges of Earth expedition, they are taking their love of scuba and freediving to the most exotic and remote edges of Earth. They have a really incredible goal, a lofty goal of meeting incredible people that have dedicated their lives to our planet. They're going to share the truths of life on the road, uncover what it takes to master diving, and most importantly, help share the stories of those they encounter with the world. So they've already visited places like Australia, Malaysia, Japan, and the Maldives. And today we're going to get to catch up with Andi and hear a little bit about the journey so far. So let me bring Andi in with us now. Hey, Andi, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. Thank you so much for having us.
Of course, it's great to have you with us. We were just kind of briefly chatting before we went live how usually we're connecting with you in the middle of the night on the other side of the planet. So it's nice to have you on a little pause in North America for a little bit.
It is very hard to connect when we're in some of these really remote regions. So we love being on the Eastern Standard Time. It makes things a lot easier.
All right. Well, Andi, I'm going to let you take over for a little bit. We want to get to know you a little bit, and then we want to get right into what you've been up to.
Sure. Well, it's very nice to meet everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm going to share my screen and just walk you through a presentation. And Joe did a really good job highlighting that the start of our expedition and what we're all about. I'm going to go a little bit deeper, and hopefully we'll spend some time getting stuck into any of your questions. So I'm going to present my screen. Okay. Hopefully you're able to see this.
All right. We have it, Andi. And if you just want to hit the hide again, and then we'll get the nice full screen.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Okay. So I am going to talk a little bit today about what our expedition is all about. I'm going to get into some of the stories that we've uncovered since being on the road. And then most importantly, I'm going to share some insights that we've gained from living completely remote and going to some of these really interesting places all around the world. And then we'll leave some time for questions. So as Joe mentioned, over 2 years, we're exploring the edges of Earth. And what that means is we're going to really interesting places that are on the front lines of conservation, where ocean conservation really, really matters to these coastal communities. And our goal is to share uplifting stories of people who have dedicated their lives to the ocean and their communities as well, because a lot of the places we're visiting, community and ocean, are linked very closely hand in hand. And so for us, we're not your typical explorers. We are not scientists. We're not academics. We are people who spent our careers building in New York at big marketing agencies. We're accountants, we're designers. So we're not your typical profile of people who are out on the road exploring in this way. But that's one of the beauties of what we're doing. We're really trying to inspire people to understand that exploration and becoming an explorer is something that you can do easily, regardless of your background and your profession. We're professional scuba divers. We work with Scuba Schools International, and we've been really fortunate enough to spend a lot of time training as scuba divers, which allows us to go to some of these really interesting and remote places to learn about all the incredible animals and environments and ecosystems that we're here to conserve. So the reason why we're doing this, over the years, my career has been in marketing, and I've met so many amazing people with incredible stories to share, but they don't necessarily know how to bring those stories to life, whether it's online or in person, or showcase their work in a way that can reach as many people as possible. So we really are looking for people whose stories have gone untold in some of these remote and interesting communities around the world to help them share their story in a way that works for them. So what we've done is we've created an independent production studio and a media platform that allows us to share these stories and share it from the heart in a really authentic way while working hand in hand with our partners on the ground in each of the locations that we visit. So our production studio, Marla and Adam, who are on our team, they're photographers and videographers. They capture the beautiful visuals that you're seeing throughout this presentation. And then on the media platform side, we work with a lot of really incredible media outlets, and we share our stories on those platforms and on those channels, as well as we've created our own blog where we share our stories as well. So we work with partners like Forbes, which is a really big online business publication that reaches lots and lots of people, that has about a 12 million a month reach. We work with companies in the travel space like Drift Travel and Flashback that help share stories of conscious exploration. And so there's lots of different partners that we work with to share those stories from the front lines of conservation and help to highlight people on the ground. And our mission and why we're doing all of this is because we want to help inspire and educate around this concept of conscious exploration or exploring consciously. And what that means is when we go to these locations, it's not just about visiting a place and checking off that we went and saw Sri Lanka or the Maldives or India, but actually being able to contribute to the people and the communities that we're meeting while we're on expedition. So they're opening their world to us, and they're showing us amazing diving, amazing ocean animals, all of the conservation work that they're doing. And in return, we're providing our skills and our services from our time working in corporate marketing to help them. So conscious exploration is all about providing that cross trade where the people we're visiting are benefiting just as much as we are through our exploration. And this is super important for us to share and educate on, because today, if we're going to travel and we're going to, leave our home base and see other places, we really need to think about the environment and the people that we're going to see and we're spending time with, and how we can help them in our travels as well. I mentioned before, we're in partnership with Scuba Schools International. We are their first ever brand ambassadors, which means when we travel, we share all of the best practices and the right way to scuba dive in order to keep our ocean environment safe and secure. Scuba diving is an absolutely amazing sport and an incredible hobby if you're interested in learning one day. But being able to dive in a way that protects the environment and doesn't hurt it is very important. So Scuba Schools International is working with us to constantly train us as divers so that we can keep the planet safe while we're traveling and exploring these very delicate ecosystems. And we're also in partnership with a company called Mares, who is a gear provider, and they outfit us with all of our scuba diving equipment to make sure that we can handle tropical waters as well as Arctic waters. This is a picture of Marla on our team. She is an absolutely amazing scuba diver and free diver. And she is, as you can see, wearing all of our Mares gear. So this is an example of what a partnership looks like, where a company is helping to outfit us in the right way so we're prepared for all different ocean environments. In this case, Marla is diving in tropical water, so this is a very small and contained dive kit. When we go into the Arctic, it's going to look a lot different, and there's going to be a lot more gear that we have to wear. So we're very thankful to have partners that help us with this. Okay, so just getting into the stories, the exciting part. When we're on expedition, we're really looking at what the problems are, the ocean issues that are happening all around the world, but then focusing on people who are behind the positive progress and really sharing the wins, the ocean conservation wins. There's a lot of bad news out there talking about how our planet's in decline, but there's a lot of people out there who are really working to solve the problems or have figured out the solution already and are doing this great work to contribute to ocean conservation every single day. So instead of looking at all the negatives, our job is to look at all the positives and help share those positive stories with the world. We think about 4 different types of storylines when we write about what's happening on the ground. Conservation stories, which talk about what the problem is and what the solutions are for some of our ocean issues. Species stories, which is all about the animals and some of our favorite stories to write, because who doesn't love incredible ocean animals? And when we talk about species stories, we're really focused on the good news and what's happening with endangered species moving out of that endangered category and becoming less vulnerable. We talk a lot about women in diving and women in science, and we also talk about a lot of indigenous communities and what they've done to connect their livelihood with the sea. And then, of course, we talk about exploration stories. So incredible explorers from all around the world who are doing amazing things, and who we can look up to and hope to, to be more like one day, as people have really charted some of the paths that we're visiting. So this picture here on the left-hand side shows you some of the people that we've met with along the way. In every location that we go, we have specific partners that we work with. They could be scuba divers, they could be ocean photographers, they could be scientists, nonprofit leaders, conservationists, academics, for-profit leaders, all different people from all walks of life who come together to tell us the story about what's happening in their location from all of these different perspectives. So it's important to hear lots of different sides of any story and not just hear one. So we try to meet with as many people as we possibly can in each location to learn about all the positive progress that's happening across the board. We are traveling to 7 continents, 150 plus locations in 40 countries over 2 years. And that sounds like a lot, and it really is. So I want to show you what our timeline looks like of where we've been and where we're going. Our completed locations in 2023, we went to South Australia to learn about the Big Four. That is great white sharks, endangered Australian sea lions, leafy sea dragons, and cuttlefish. And that was one of our most exciting and amazing wildlife encounters that we've had to date. And we had so many amazing interactions with animals to really get a feel for what it's like to work on the front lines of conservation in South Australia. In Vanuatu, we were studying dugongs and looking at some uncharted dive sites that people have never dove before. Dugongs, if you don't know what they are, they're animals that are kind of like a manatee on this side of the world, on the Western Hemisphere. Dugongs are very similar, and they are so special. People used to think they were like mermaids when they would see them because they just swim so gracefully, and they're very special animals. New Caledonia, we went and studied the double barrier reef there, which is one of the largest lagoons in the world, which was a very amazing experience. Fiji, we studied bull sharks and tiger sharks. The Solomon Islands is a very unexplored archipelago, and we got the chance to learn all about diving culture in this incredibly remote region. In the Philippines, we went and learned all about thresher sharks. We learned about blackwater diving, which I'll explain in a little bit, and some other really incredible conservation teams who are working on marine protected areas. In Hong Kong, we studied oysters and the importance of shellfish reefs. And in Japan, we met the legendary Ama freedivers and learned all about the some really incredible species out there that are quite endangered. We also went to Cambodia, the Maldives, Sri Lanka, India, Thailand, Florida, and Peru. So we've traveled a lot of places and we've seen a lot of things. But over the course of our completed location, it's been really amazing to meet with the people above all else. Our upcoming locations, we are going to Hawaii as of tomorrow. There we're going to be focusing on manta rays, which is really exciting. We head to California, and then we do all of Central America, which includes Panama, Costa Rica, Nicaragua, Honduras, Guatemala, and Belize. We spend quite a bit of time in Mexico, both on the East Coast and the West Coast, in the Yucatan and Baja. And then we head over to Ecuador to explore the Galapagos, which, if you don't know much about the Galapagos, it's an incredible place for biodiversity. Then we head to Africa. We'll be in South Africa and Mozambique. We do quite a few weeks in Canada, both on the East and the West Coast. And then we start heading up into the Arctic and cold regions in Alaska, Greenland, and Iceland. We'll spend a little bit of time in the Farne and Faroe Islands, which are right around Denmark and the UK. And then we head to the Azores in Portugal, along with Scotland and Ireland. And then we make our way from Norway back over to the Eastern Hemisphere, where we'll spend some time on Christmas Island and Western Australia. So lots of places, lots of people, lots of experiences. I want to talk a little bit about what we've learned since being on the edges of Earth. The places that we visited, the way we look at where we go and why we choose some of these locations is very much on what the positive news is. So where are places that have done a really amazing job protecting their ocean ecosystems and building up community around that. So this picture shows a drone shot of a place called Isle of Pine in New Caledonia. And there's a team there called the Great Barrier Reef Foundation that's done an absolutely amazing job protecting that double barrier reef that's found there. For us, we also choose places where there's incredible diving. So this picture shows us doing something called blackwater diving, which I was mentioning earlier. And blackwater diving is where you, in the middle of the night, in the absolute pitch black, go out into open ocean, meaning no islands or land masses really around you, and you drop down to anywhere from 10 to 20 meters and explore what the ocean looks like at night. At night, at this time, there is something called a vertical migration happening, where all of these ocean animals, these really wild, crazy, never before seen animals, come from the depths of the ocean up to the top of near the surface to feed. And then early in the morning, they go right back down to the bottom. So this migration happens every single day, and it's one of the biggest migrations in the world, and it happens 2 times, and it's a really special experience. So when we have opportunities to have some really unique diving experiences, we try to go to those locations as well. Animals. This year, the leopard shark that we saw in New Caledonia. It's such an amazing animal. It's quite symmetrical and it has such beautiful patterns. And a lot of the time when we're going to these locations, we're looking to meet people who've studied these types of animals for their entire careers. So for example, we were just in Florida recently, and we met with, say, the Manatee Club. There is a scientist there who has studied manatees for 40 years in the same location, doing the same thing every single day for 40 years. He is the absolute subject matter expert on manatees in Florida. So getting the chance to meet really interesting people who are doing great work on behalf of species is something that we look for in our exploration. And then last but not least, the people. This is a shot of Marla, Adam, and I meeting local fishermen in Sri Lanka. And these people have figured out a way to coexist in harmony with the sea. Some of these men had been working in fishing since they were probably some of your age, 10, 12, 13 plus years old. And they've spent their entire careers figuring out how to sustainably live off of the sea while not depleting the fish stocks in the ocean and constantly being able to feed their families and give back to their community. So for us, so much of what we're doing is about the people just as much as it is about the animal, the diving, and the places that we visit. But I want to stop here for a moment and tell you really succinctly over the last 6 months what we've learned from being on the edges of Earth and what we hope to start expanding on as we go into the next year and a half of our journey. The first piece is that there's good news everywhere. Even if you're seeing or hearing a lot of bad news about the ocean and the planet, a lot of that is true, but there's a lot of people who are spending time studying what's working and figuring out how to replicate that around the world. So it's really important to know that we should be quite hopeful because there's so many smart people that are very invested in figuring out solutions or have found solutions to combat some of the ocean problems that we're facing. On the flip side, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And something that we've learned over 6 months is that we need more people committing to the ocean cause. But it doesn't mean you have to be a scientist. So if you have aspirations when you grow up to be something different than a scientist, then you can still apply those skills and those learnings to supporting ocean causes. I'm a marketer. Adam on our team is an accountant. Marla on our team is a designer. And yet we're all finding ways to blend our expertise to support the ocean problems and the ocean issues that are out there. A lot of the time, the next point is, a lot of the time people think that to be an explorer, you need to travel far and wide and have those experiences. But really, so much exploration can happen right where you live. So many scientists and nonprofit leaders and divers that we're meeting have spent their entire lives exploring their own backyard and have contributed in a major way to advancing our human knowledge around these topics. So becoming an explorer right at home is something that you can do, and you can even do it right now. And then lastly, always following your dreams. When we started this expedition, there were a lot of people who told us this wasn't going to be possible because traversing the world for 2 years to all of these locations is rather challenging. But I just want to emphasize this point so much that if you have a dream and there's something that you really want to do, there's nothing stopping you. So age is not a limit. Time is not a limit. Those things don't matter. If you have something that you're really passionate about and you want to explore it, regardless of how old you are, regardless of where you come from or your background and your experiences, it's definitely possible if you put in the hard work. So the next part, everyone asks us a couple questions, and I'm going to turn it over to you to ask us some. But the big ones we always get: what is our favorite place that we visited? And there is Absolutely no answer to this. Everywhere we visited is really special in its own way. This is a picture of us taking a drone shot of the Maldives. We were staying on Ra Atoll where we were learning about manta rays. And it was such an incredible experience. But every single place that we've gone has something special about it, and especially the people that we're visiting in all of these locations. When you're meeting people dedicated and committed to ocean conservation, it's a really special experience, no matter where you are. Our favorite food. This is a picture of a giant clam that we ate in Vanuatu on the Mascaline Islands, and it was very disgusting. It was not our favorite food. We have loved all the local culinary experiences that we've had, but I have to say, the fresh seafood right out of the sea has been probably some of the most adventurous and exciting things that we've tried. This here, Sethric, he farms these giant clams, and he is very conscious about the type of clams that he brings to the family to eat. So he was showing us one of his delicacies and one of his favorite things that he likes to eat. Our favorite shark is definitely the thresher shark. These thresher sharks are found all year round in the Philippines, and they're very shy and skittish. But when we were there, we got very lucky, and on every dive, we were there for about a week. Every dive, we were seeing about 5 or 6 of these really shiny and smooth-looking sharks with these really big, beady eyes. And they are considered one of the cutest sharks in the sea. And then our favorite moment, for me personally, my favorite moment when I look back on 6 months was meeting these women. These women are all in their 90s. They're very old, and they just stopped freediving only last year. So these women are 90, 91, 92, and they have been freediving every single day throughout their career. So it was really exciting to get a chance to meet women who have been diving their entire lives and learning from them about their freediving practices. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen here, and I would love to hear if you have any questions.
All right, Andy. Well, thank you so much for taking us into the expedition, to kind of some of the thinking behind it, taking us to some of those places, and then, of course, sharing what you've learned so far. I think that's really important, especially, the part that there is good stuff happening, that is not all bad news. There are people working hard all over the planet to protect what we've got and come up with these sustainable solutions.
For sure.
All right. Well, let's start meeting some classrooms. So not too far from me down the road is some grade 6s hanging out in Linwood. So I'm going to bring them into the call. How are we doing today, grade 6s?
How are we doing, guys?
Good. All right. We're ready for you. Who's got a question?
All right. We have our first question coming in. What would you like to ask, Nancy?
Have you ever seen the wild horses?
Oh, the wild horses. We have seen lots of wild horses. In fact, we love wild horses so much that whenever we have an opportunity to see wild horses, we go and try to find them because horses are my favorite animal.
Whoa. Okay. I think a lot of us have that in common then. We have another question for you.
Have you ever seen like an armadillo?
An armadillo? I haven't actually, but that would be really cool to see one day.
Okay. And another question.
When you were in Japan, what was your favorite food to eat?
Okay, that's a really good question. Japan has some of the best food on the planet. Absolutely amazing. And I am a big sushi lover, but we have to be really careful about the type of sushi that we eat because some of the fish that are put in sushi are quite endangered. So we talk to a lot of people about what type of sushi is good and bad to eat. The other thing that we loved is something called, it's a very special rice. It's found in Kyoto, and I'll have to send you a special video of how this rice is made. But it's rice and then an egg that sits right on top. And the chef opens the egg in a really special way, and it falls perfectly onto the rice, and then you mix it together. So it's kind of like a fried rice, but it's only found in Kyoto in Japan.
Wow. Okay. How many questions are we allowed to ask?
Let's take a pause, but I promise we'll come back.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Keep those questions on deck. We're going to go now to Washington. We have some 5th graders hanging out with us. Let me bring them in front and center. How are we doing, 5th graders? Oh, can you grab the mute for me?
There we go.
There we go.
Hello.
Hi. Hi. Have you ever worked to help axolotls?
No, we haven't actually. That's a really good question.
How come you're interested in axolotls?
Because they're cute.
Hmm.
Fair.
Fair
Agreed.
point. Yeah.
They're also sort of our class mascot, right?
Yeah.
There we go.
They're really special. We haven't yet, but hopefully we'll get the chance to.
Very cool.
You want to go?
What's your favorite sea animal?
So my personal favorite sea animal is the beluga whale. Do you know what that is?
Yeah.
Beluga whales are my favorite because they're so smart and they are really amazing at navigating. And we're getting to see them in Alaska in August.
Cool.
We'll
And
definitely
if
have
we
to
can
catch
do
up after
one
that
more
one.
this round.
How do you choose like where you're gonna go next?
That's a really good question. Thank you for asking that one. We choose all of our locations based on the really amazing conservation stories that are happening, but also on marine aggregations that are happening around the world. So, for example, the reason why we picked Baja, Mexico, is because there's really big devil ray aggregations there. Do you know what a devil ray is? Have you seen them before?
No.
They're kind of like small manta rays, and they're really special and beautiful. And there's a lot of people who are protecting that big congregation of the devil rays there in Mexico. So we want to go check it out.
All right, River School. We're going to take a pause for now, but I promise I'll come back for another collection of questions. If you're tuning in via YouTube, use the chat. I'm going to grab a couple questions from there in just a moment. But we have Mrs. Ball's class hanging out with us. I believe they're in the Goderich area. Let me bring them in front and center. How we doing, biology crew?
We're good.
All right.
These students are heading out onto various pathways potentially next year. And I just wondered, how do you head out on your pathway? How did this all start? How did you get that team together? How could they be you?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for the question. My path is a little different because I didn't get the chance to study biology. That wasn't the direction that I went. So it was quite difficult to shift from being a marketing professional and moving into the conservation space. One of the things that I spent a lot of time doing when I was just getting started was meeting people in the conservation space who had built their careers up and had a lot of experience. And I just went and shadowed them and I learned from them. So I worked with a group called Sea Legacy based in Canada with the founders, Paul Nicklin and Christina Mittermeier, who are very, very seasoned explorers and ocean photographers. And working with them for a couple years, I got a chance to see how they do things and how they learn or how they explore. And then I started working with quite a few other nonprofits to learn how the whole conservation space works. So my biggest advice to give with a group just starting out is find some people who are already very embedded in the ocean conservation space or in the science or biology or academic space and learn from them and start to absorb a lot of the information that you're gaining from your experiences with people who have spent their careers in the space already, and then start figuring out what little space or niche you want to occupy and how your skill sets can be applied in a really special way that's different from what's already being done. And so that's how I started out. And then the other thing that I did was I moved from New York City to Australia to learn to become a professional scuba diver and spent 5 years really, really training. And through that training process, I started to learn a lot about the ocean and how it works and getting really deep into conservation themes because I was actually spending a lot of time in the water. And when you spend all that time in the water, you start to really understand and appreciate what it is you're working to protect.
All right. Great question from Mrs. Ball's crew. And I think that's really good advice, because if you can find your passion or what your passion is and turn it into your career, there's nothing better. It makes almost doesn't feel like work when you really love what you're doing. All right, grade 12s, do you have another question there for us? I can also come back too after another swing through some more classrooms and YouTube.
Yeah, you can go find some YouTube questions if you want for now.
All right, we'll swing back your way towards the end. We'll see if there's another question there. Okay. So jumping through YouTube here, let's grab a couple questions from here. So Andy, first question is any unexpected, expeditions don't always go as planned. Any unexpected surprises come your way?
Yes, Wow, good question. Lots of them. Everything goes wrong. So no matter how hard you plan and no matter how much time you put into thinking you have a perfect schedule, there are so many complications with going on an expedition like this. The biggest one is getting hurt. So right when we were leaving for our next destination, we just finished South Australia in March. We just finished Western Australia, March 23. And I had just finished my dive master training. And on the very last day of months and months and months of training to be a professional diver, I sprained my back and lost all mobility in my legs and couldn't walk for multiple months. And so we had to cancel the whole first half of our expedition and replan everything while I was very sick and relearning how to walk due to the injury. So that was probably the first really big hurdle. And then the second really big hurdle comes down to weather. So when you're traveling to some of these really remote places and you get rained out, you can't dive. So you have to have lots and lots and lots of backup plans. And then the third hurdle is partners. When you're dealing with lots and lots of people, there's lots of schedules and personalities and needs and desires and wants that everybody has, and being able to shift and adapt and evolve to the things that our partners need and some changes that happen with our partners is really important. So my biggest learning on expedition as far as the planning aspect goes is to be okay with nothing going the way you planned and being very flexible and adaptable.
All right. Very cool. There's nothing worse than when you get somewhere and there's nothing that you want more than get underwater, but then the weather doesn't allow it. And when it stretches for a few days, it can be agonizing. So yeah, I feel yeah. And time is limited too, right? You have a certain amount of time in each place and you want to cover the stories and meet the people. So Mr. M's crew is joining us online and they want to know, have you ever seen a blue dragonfish?
I haven't, but that sounds really cool too. There's so many incredible species that we're seeking out and so many that we don't expect to see. It's always very interesting when you go to a location and you think that you're going to see that devil ray aggregation that I was talking about, but this season they're not there for some reason, and that has a lot to do with climate change and environmental factors that are way out of our control, or even just being at the wrong place at the wrong time. But we always get really excited when we stumble upon cool species that we weren't expecting. So that one has not been seen yet, but I hope we get the chance to.
All right. I'm just going to really quickly share my screen here for those who are tuning in and don't know what this fish looks like. It's a really cool.
It's really cool.
Looking fish. So we hope you get to check that out. And Mr. M's class is obviously excited and hoping there for you as well. Very
Thank
cool.
you.
Okay. Let's go back to our Linwood grade sixes, see if they have a couple more questions for us. I have a feeling that they do.
Oh, we have tons. Okay. All right. You know, so start us off.
Have you seen any owls?
Was that otters?
Owls.
I think he's more interested in owls.
Owls. We have seen owls. Owls are my second favorite. So beluga's my number one, horses are number two, and owls are number three. In fact, I love owls so much that on my Instagram feed, there's owl content everywhere. We love owls, but we have only seen one owl, and it was the tawny owl. And that was in Tasmania, and that was not on expedition, but it was a really incredible encounter because they have a really big mouth. And they're very special.
Very cool. All right.
Have you seen a seahorse?
I have seen seahorses. I've seen hundreds of seahorses. We were in Cambodia and we were working with a group called Marine Conservation Cambodia who specializes in conservation of seahorses. And they are so cool. So if you ever want to go see some seahorses, that's a really good team to meet up with.
Okay. And one last one.
How deep do you dive?
How deep do we dive? We go very deep. So we are trained to go to at around 40 meters, which is I think 130 something feet. So we go quite deep on our recreational gear, but we're training with rebreathers, which means that the air that we're breathing is circulating through our entire system, which allows us to go even deeper. So hopefully in 2024, we'll be going deeper than 40 meters.
Wow.
All right. Very cool. Well, Linwood Grade Sixes, thanks for another great series of questions. Let's check in with our Washington crew and see if they have a couple more.
Hi. While
Hi.
you were in the Galapagos, if you did any dives, how many did you do?
We haven't gone to the Galapagos yet. We're going in June, but we're going to be doing hundreds of dives. So every day for 2 weeks, we'll probably clock about 40 or 50 dives there.
Wow. Thanks.
Pretty cool.
How big is your carbon footprint?
That's a really good question. So one of the things that we try to focus on is going to places that don't require us to fly too much. Because if we have to fly from, let's say, Japan to New York, that is a really bad carbon footprint. But for example, in Central America, going to all of those countries, we're just going to be driving.
What's your favorite place that you've been to?
So many places are so amazing. But if I had to choose just one, and it was for ocean, it would be the Philippines, because that was really incredible to see all the animals there.
Yeah. He just asked me something.
All right, let's
What
squeeze
is
in
the
one more.
What is the most endangered species?
The most endangered species. Well, there's many endangered species, but one of the most endangered species that we're getting to see is my very favorite, the beluga whale. There's only the population that we're going to see, there's only 300 of them left, which is very sad, but there's a lot of work being done to protect those whales.
All right. Thanks, River School. So Mr. M's class popped a few more online. Will you be visiting the islands in Indonesia where you can see Komodo dragons?
We already went there. We went to Labuan Bajo a couple years ago, and we got to see the Komodo dragons, and they're amazing. They're very special, and they're very big.
All right. And then you just talked about your favorite location. They're wondering, is there ever anywhere that you've gone to and kind of regretted it? It wasn't what you thought it would be, or something was off?
No. Everywhere is amazing in its own special way, but it's all just a frame of mind. There's some places that we go where it's raining and we don't get to do all the things that we wanted to do. So maybe we didn't have as incredible of an experience diving as we would have liked. But nonetheless, all of these places that we're visiting have something really special to offer.
All right. We'll check in with Mrs. Ball's crew and see if they have another question for us.
We were wondering about your exploration of coral reefs and what you could share your learning about coral reefs.
We've seen a lot of coral reefs all around the world, and coral reefs are really suffering. They are dealing with lots of environmental factors and lots of human factors that are causing their decline. However, there are lots of teams focusing on coral reefs. In particular, we work with the group that I mentioned before, the Great Barrier Reef Foundation, and they have a team called Resilient Reefs. And Resilient Reefs works all around the world in really important locations, and they focus on reef restoration by empowering the community to deliver on some really important milestones. So we've had a chance to visit some of those teams, and it's pretty cool how they've been able to rally the community around restoring their reefs that are right there in their backyard. But there's also lots of other teams that we're working with that are actually replanting coral. So for example, when we're in Hawaii, we're meeting with a few groups that have figured out methodology to regrow some of the reefs that have died for various reasons. So they're empowering their communities to help on a regular basis plant new coral.
Okay, good question. All right, so Miss Linwood's class just sent in a question via the chat our class from Linwood, our grade sixes, just sent in a question. They really want to get into the sharks. So can you tell us a little bit about maybe the biggest that you've come across? Were you nervous, or any surprising sharks?
Sure. We've seen lots and lots of sharks. The biggest shark we've ever seen is the whale shark. That is a very large animal, 12 meters long, very, very big, but it's slow moving and very gentle seeming. So we weren't scared when we saw that. We were more just excited. The scariest shark we've ever seen is certainly the great white shark. And it was scary because of what we have in our minds about great white sharks. Maybe we've seen some movies about them or heard that they're very dangerous, and they are for sure, But when you actually encounter a great white shark the way we did, you notice how graceful and peaceful and calm these animals are, and how disinterested in us they are, because we're not we're not of interest to them at all. So if you just passively observe them as they swim by, you're not in their line of sight. That was a really surprising experience that we had, because we have in our heads of what we think great white sharks are, and it really wasn't that when we had that experience. One of my favorite sharks is the thresher shark that I mentioned before. They're really special because they have that really long tail that kind of looks like a whip. And what they do is they stun fish with that tail, and they stun the fish, and then they eat the fish after they've stunned it, and the fish can't move. So we thought that was pretty cool and exciting. The leopard shark is really cool as well, just because it's so beautiful, and when it comes up, it's so slow moving and unexpected. But I would definitely say the most surprising shark encounter I've ever had was the great white shark, and realizing how graceful and peaceful and calm these animals are, and having it be very far away from what I thought. And yes, I did see the news about the first sighting of the baby white shark. That is so cool. And that is such a breakthrough. And those are the types of people that we're meeting when we're on expedition, to hear all about their really incredible encounters and their stories.
All right, very cool. Okay, so we're getting close to the end of our time, but I want to squeeze in. We'll take one really quick visit to a couple classrooms. Our grade sixes in Linwood have a really good question about a different kind of diving that you're doing. So, and River School wants to know too. So we'll just get it out there. Free diving. How is that different than diving with the tanks?
Okay, so there's a couple different types of diving. There's scuba diving, and scuba diving means you have a tank on your back and you're breathing through that tank, and that's helping you stay underwater. That is your breathing mechanism, and it keeps you safe, and it keeps you breathing air like we do on land. Free diving is really different because it requires you to hold your breath and go down into the ocean on a single breath hold. So some people call it free diving, some people call it single breath diving, some people call it skin diving. And that means you do not have any equipment on, and you're just using your own body and your own breath to get you down into the sea. Free diving is very challenging because it requires you to be able to hold your breath for an extended period of time and handle the ocean pressure, because as you go deeper, there's pressure on your body that's happening from the ocean, and it makes it even harder to hold your breath. So really amazing free divers who are diving super, super deep, they are incredibly talented athletes. For us, there's another type of diving, which is, like I was mentioning before, using a rebreather. And a rebreather allows you to circulate the air through your kit. So you have multiple tanks instead of just one, and you have much different diving equipment. And that allows you to stay down even longer in the sea and go even deeper.
Okay. Well, we are at that time where we have to start wrapping up for today. I want to start out, the classrooms, I know they would just keep going with questions because that's just the nature of students. They're curious. But hopefully, Andi, will have another connection soon. And hopefully we'll have a few more little videos we do, daily dives with you, to highlight some of the really cool places
For sure.
you've been able to visit. A huge shout out to our classrooms for all those amazing questions. We still have some backstage with us, so if you want to give just a little wave or a goodbye and thank you, we'll bring a few groups in here. Thank you so much for hanging out with us today. Always good to see you guys. Awesome stuff.
Nice to see you.
And then to our classrooms via YouTube, thanks for the questions as well. And Andi, thank you so much to you, to your team, for doing the great work. Hopefully we can do something live from the field, especially when you're in a good time zone, kind of rocking through Central and South America and places like that. That would be a lot of fun.
For sure. Or we can see the hammerheads and the dolphins. As I see, that's a question from the class, because we will definitely be spending time with those guys.
All right. Excellent. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for hanging out and have a great rest of the week. We hope to see you some more in February. Thanks, everyone.